We're learning more about the inner workings of Facebook, revealed in a massive collection of leaked documents. CBS News, along with other news outlets, reviewed thousands of pages of internal research, employee comments, and presentations. They suggest Facebook was aware its platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, can fuel hate. Hate, polarization, conspiracy theories, and misinformation, but at times did little to stop it. 60 Minutes Plus correspondent Lori Siegel joins us now with the story. Lori.
Good morning. Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen left the company earlier this year after photographing thousands of pages of documents. The Wall Street Journal first reported on some of them, and now redacted copies have been shared with journalists around the world. Now, while the company says there's no way to draw fair conclusions from this, quote, curated selection, we sat down with one former executive who says the documents reflect his own experience of what was going on inside Facebook.
I became convinced that Facebook was causing harm in the world and causing division in the world.
Brian Boland spent 11 years building Facebook, most recently overseeing market and product strategy. He left last year when he says he saw the platform driving racism after George Floyd's death.
If I couldn't change it, and I tried and I couldn't change it, then I couldn't be a part of it.
You believe that it was tearing us apart?
Yeah, and I'm concerned that Facebook causes divisions in a lot of areas, political being one of them, and a powerful one that we feel viscerally, but also in race and ethnicity, religion.
Evidence of those concerns can be found across the thousands of pages of leaked internal records from inside the company. They provide an intimate window into Facebook's own research and the frustrations of employees who were trying to clean up the site. We shared some of them with Boland.
These people are PhD level researchers creating documents that are highlighting real harms on the platform.
Like this research that reveals the company knew vaccine hesitancy was rampant in comments. This analysis found Facebook systems missed most of the hate speech on the platform in Afghanistan, detecting it at a worryingly low rate. And this one, from July 2019, called Carol's Journey into QAnon, charts how a dummy account could be served up conspiracy theories in just 2 days. Some of this research showed that within a week of someone just liking a conservative account like Melania Trump or Donald Trump, they were served up QAnon content.
When I saw a lot of this stuff, it was enough for me to leave the company. There wasn't enough focus on taking a research study like that and saying, shouldn't we invest a lot of time and effort in really understanding that?
The report recommended Facebook stop suggesting QAnon content to users. But it wasn't until more than a year later that the company banned the group. It seemed like oftentimes these changes weren't implemented. Why not?
Because those types of safety things are not the top priority. The top priority is growth.
It's the same allegation Frances Haugen made when she revealed her identity on 60 Minutes earlier this month.
Facebook over and over again has shown it chooses profit over safety.
And a claim Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg denied. Writing in a post 2 days later, this idea we prioritize profit over safety and well-being, that's just not true. But according to one memo from last year, Zuckerberg told employees they would not move ahead with part of this proposal to reduce bad content if the changes led to a material trade-off in meaningful social interactions, Facebook's term for user engagement.
Mark chose to stick with the growth side of the business. It's a stark example of a trade-off between, do you want to reduce harmful content, or do you want to reduce people's time on the platform? You choose keeping people's time on the platform.
A resignation letter posted last year from a rank-and-file employee says the cold shoulder from top management was demoralizing. Integrity teams are facing increasing barriers to building safeguards. We were willing to act only after things had spiraled into a dire state. Do you think that this is a fair characterization?
It's a very fair characterization. If you look at the history of Facebook, they clean up the mess after the fact.
And there may have been no bigger mess than the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. According to this document, safety measures put in place ahead of the election were rolled back and only reintroduced after the riot broke out. Internally, frustration boiled over. One employee wrote, "Haven't we had enough time to figure out how to manage discourse without enabling violence?"
It felt like the people who were closest to understanding the work and closest to understanding the problem were the ones most frustrated.
In a statement, a Facebook spokesperson told CBS News the leaked pages lack context and leave an incomplete, distorted picture of our company.
there's this very strong story being told that these documents are cherry-picked. And I can tell you as somebody who's been there, that's just not true.
You are part of these products. You helped build these products. You probably made millions. Why should we listen to you?
I don't benefit from speaking up negatively against former friends and coworkers. There are real harms being caused to real human beings. And at the end of the day, you can decide whether you want to listen to me, or you can look at a bunch of documents that were written by some of the most talented people in the world that are saying the same things.
Virtual reality.
Bolin is sounding the alarm as the company is pouring millions into an ambitious plan to move beyond social media and develop its own virtual world, a Facebook metaverse. We're entering a new era of the web. It's in these virtual worlds where our children will live and they will have their identities. Should we trust the company?
No, you shouldn't. And you should be terrified, because if the company is going to build a new metaverse, but is going to have safety, security, protecting against misinformation and hate speech as a relatively low priority, what world is that going to be?
Facebook says it's invested millions in developing these new products responsibly. The company declined to make CEO Mark Zuckerberg available for an interview, but said in a statement, "We're a business and we make profit, but the idea that we do so at the expense of people's safety or well-being misunderstands where our own commercial interests lie." These Facebook papers are now part of several whistleblower complaints Frances Haugen filed with federal officials.
You know, what I don't get is clearly the company has invested a lot of money in like gathering the information, right? Like they did this Carol's Journey into QAnon experiment, and they found, 2 days into putting up this fake account, QAnon information is like flooding Carol's poor newsfeed. So why put all the money into the research, but then no follow through afterwards? To me, as if it would have been pretty simple to say, okay, let's turn down the volume on the QAnon stuff. This Carol is interested in conservative politics. We'll send her more conservative politics without the disinformation. What is Facebook's sort of excuse or explanation as to why they don't act on the information?
I think that was what was fascinating about looking through thousands of pages of these docs, is that it's not that they're not doing the research. There's a lot of, to Facebook's credit, really interesting, fascinating, and important research here that shows a lot of these things. But, what Brian Bolin, who we just interviewed, was saying is a lot of time, a lot of these documents will come out, but the company is hesitant to make changes because it could impact growth. It could impact the actual product. And, Facebook, we asked them about about this doc on Carol's Journey to QAnon, and what they said is it's a perfect example of research the company does to improve the systems and help inform our decision to remove QAnon from the platform. Now, we have to say that document came out in 2019. It took a long time for Facebook to actually ban QAnon. It wasn't until 2020 until the company banned QAnon. And, I've spent a lot of time in these groups with, folks who have fallen into conspiracies. And a lot of that happened in that period of 2019 to 2020.
Lori, one of the things that I think it's important to point out for people is just how insidious all of this reporting is on what's happening around the world. The Wall Street Journal had I thought, a heartbreaking quote about misinformation that is spread, for example, in India, as you know. And one of those quotes that stuck out to me, a Muslim man said, if social media survives 10 years like this, there will only be hatred. And when we look at our own country, based on these leaked documents, explain what kind of role Facebook had in the growth of the Stop the Steal movement and the insurrection on the Capitol on January 6th.
Yeah, I think that was really interesting to dig into that too, because to some degree it was a game of whack-a-mole, and it seemed as though they didn't quite understand the gravity of it, or they couldn't get on top of it from their own internal docs. And these are quotes from their docs. This isn't something I'm saying. They said that what they missed was that this was a cohesive grassroots movement, and their own enforcement was, quote, piecemeal. Their own internal memo said that they lacked the tools and protocols for handling the evolution of these movements, and they had little policies when it came to coordinated authentic harm. And I think, as we noted in our piece, Facebook had ways to mitigate violence and incitement ahead of January 6th, but they had rolled back these measures right after the election, and it wasn't until after the riots broke out that they put those measures back in place. So a lot of what these documents were, where you saw employees criticizing the company on January 6th for not having kept those measures in place to protect users.
To what Vlad just spoke about, the impact around the world, what did you learn about Facebook's ability to moderate content in languages other than English?
Well, in short, that it's a big problem and that it's costly, and they have trouble doing it in a cost-effective way. This is what Brian Bolin, who we spoke to, he said, the company isn't investing enough resources in areas that are at the greatest risk, which are developing countries. And he says this is the stuff that doesn't get enough airtime, and we should continue to talk about this more and more, that it's a really hard problem, and that Facebook doesn't do a good enough job. It's complicated in trying to moderate this with all the different dialects, and that this is complicated, but the company hasn't done a good enough job of this, and they go out and they connect the world. And I think as long as I've known Facebook and the company and interviewed Zuckerberg many times, the whole idea of connecting the world has been at the forefront. But I think the question is, at what cost? And are we also protecting the world after we make those connections? And I think some of these documents suggest that no, the company has not put the proper measures in place to protect the places it connects.
Lori, at the end of your report there, the most striking sort of soundbite that came from the whistleblower that you spoke to was when you asked him, should people trust Facebook? And he said no. And to me, it's not surprising. Companies generally, by their nature, which is the profit motive, find it very, very hard to police themselves. Some do to an extent, but oftentimes when you're a company like Facebook, you need some entity that will do a better job of regulating Facebook, because clearly up until this point they haven't been able to do it. So what would need to happen at Facebook to make these changes suggested by its own researchers? It does strike me, and Lori, you've been covering this, you've been covering Facebook for years, that Congress is really, all throughout the years we've said, Congress is looking, Congress is holding hearings. Right. It does feel right now that they're all there's bipartisan agreement that something needs to be done.
Yeah, and I think this has to push them over the edge in some capacity. It's not just us who have access to these documents. It's so many different outlets at this point who have been piecing apart all of these different documents and looking at the different stories that have come out about it. But even talking to Brian Bolin, what he said is accountability, the regulation, and right, this is not a new conversation. We've been having this conversation. But, regulators, what he said was need to create an oversight body when it comes to creating regulation around transparency. And also, there's so much interesting research here. Getting other folks access to this research in a way that protects user data can only be helpful. And, and to add to that, Facebook is reportedly about to rebrand as a quote, metaverse company. This is the next iteration of the web that we're barely just talking about. But it's really important that we start talking about it, because it's an era where our children are going to be living in these virtual spaces, and Facebook is about to reportedly rebrand as one of these places. So we've got to start talking about these, because there will be all sorts of safety and trust issues in this new era.
Lori, I know you've interviewed.
That really actually caught my attention, Lori, because as Vlad and everyone knows, I love VR, and Facebook's sort of VR Oculus app is called Horizons, and it's in beta right now, so not everyone has access to it, but I'm one of those people that can kind of go in the world. And one of the things, one of the selling points is that it's a world created by the users. Which I think, Facebook sort of likes to tell us that, and that's why they can sort of, an excuse to take a hands-off approach is because, well, you're creating your experience, right? But this is much more intimate now. Now you're walking around and you're talking to people, and right now it's very rudimentary because the users are small. There's only, a small group of people who have Oculus sets that are interested in this sort of thing. But I wonder if they have any sort of bumpers or rails in place to ensure that, you don't get someone creating a QAnon world in this other space. I wonder if they even talked about anything like that when they talk about this meta universe.
Look, they say they do, right? And they say they're investing millions in safety in this world. But remember, they've also said that about the social media platform that we've just spent all this time talking about. And so the big question is, do we trust Facebook? And how do we trust that the company is going to take all this type of research that it is investing all this money in and make the decisions that are going to be best for users, for your children who are going to be spending more time in these worlds? And I think that's why it's important to have these conversations now, as opposed to in 10 years when the next whistleblower, right, could potentially be someone trying to talk about the issues in the virtual space, because there are going to be so many issues in the virtual space. And it's not just Facebook, by the way. It's all these different companies who are working on potential metaverse or, these experiences where you're going to live in a part virtual world. And so this is we're entering a new era of the internet, and we've got to start talking about some of these issues.
And there's no way really to... I think sometimes people want to say, Emery and Lori, look, you don't have to be on Facebook. Like, I'm not really on Facebook all that much, so I don't see all this stuff that is constantly being reported on. But people point out to me that, that I'm an aberration, that, most of the world is on Facebook, obviously, and uses it for things other than just checking up on your college buddies to see what they're up to. And it may be hard to unplug yourself from Facebook, especially as they get into this virtual reality stuff.
Yeah, and by the way, this is why it's so important to have that conversation about developing countries. This is how they rely on the internet, and their version of the internet is Facebook. So that's very important. And remember, Facebook isn't just Facebook, a social network. It's also WhatsApp, because Facebook bought WhatsApp. It's also Instagram.
Right.
It's all these different companies, and it's about to become even bigger with its moves that we're going to hear about probably as soon as this week.
Wow. Well, Lori, I know you've interviewed Zuck. Hopefully he'll reach out to you, because what better way to tell his side of what is being reported than on 60 Minutes Plus? And I know that you have that relationship with him where you've interviewed him in the past, so maybe he'll come around. And I know you're asking, so we'll see where that goes. Lori Siegel, always great to have you. Incredible reporting as always. You can learn more about what was in those leaked Facebook documents at cbsnews.com/Facebook.